My wife sent me a text at 6:12 on a Tuesday evening telling me she'd run off with my best friend, and the only thing I typed back was two words, "Good luck," and then I set the phone face down on my tailgate and finished my sandwich because she had no idea what she'd just climbed into, and I wasn't about to be the one to tell her. Hey, real quick before I get into it, you clicked on me today out of a million things you could have been doing, and that's not nothing, so thank you. Do one thing for me while you're here. Put your town in the comments, big city, little nothing town, with one blinking light. I don't care. I read every one of them out loud, and yours could be the one I call out next time. And if that like button and that subscribe button are anywhere near your thumb, that's about the only thing holding a channel this size upright. All right. So, 6:12 on a Tuesday, I was parked in the gravel behind my shop off Old Highway 11, outside Hattiesburg, Mississippi, tail end of a June day. And if you've never been to South Mississippi in June, imagine standing inside somebody's mouth. That's the weather. My shirt was stuck to my back. I had a gas station sandwich on the tailgate, turkey, the kind with the little mayonnaise packet, and a Barks going warm beside it, and my phone buzzed. Kelsey, I'm gone. I'm with Cody. I'm not going to lie to you anymore, so I'm not sorry. Don't call me. Don't call my mama. We aren't coming back. That's it. That's the whole thing. 10 years of marriage, and she got it down to 4 sentences and a period. And I sat there. People always want the story where the guy laughs. I didn't laugh. My hands went cold in 95-degree heat. That's a real thing that happened. And there was a sound in my ears like a truck idling that wasn't there. 10 years. She'd made me eggs that morning. She'd asked me to pick up dog food. Then I looked at the toolbox on the bed of my truck, maybe 3 feet from my elbow, and I thought about the folder inside it, and I typed good luck. Because here's the thing she didn't know. I'd had that folder for 11 days. 11 days of driving around with it, opening it at red lights, trying to work out how I was going to say it out loud to my wife without breaking her in half. And she'd gone and solved my whole problem for me. She'd run off with the one person on this earth I was about to destroy. Okay, let me back up, because none of it lands right unless you know who these people were to me. My name's Wes. I run log trucks. I haul pine out of the piney woods down here to the mills, and if you've ever driven through this part of Mississippi, you've been stuck behind me on a 2-lane doing 45 with a load of longwood on, cussing me, and that's fine. Latimer Hauling. I started it at 23 years old with one truck out of an auction in Laurel that leaked so much oil I kept a case of it on the passenger seat like a little friend. By the time this happened, I had 9 trucks, 11 drivers, a shop, and a standing contract with the mill up in Taylorsville that kept the lights on. 23 years old. Hang on to that number. I'm not going to remind you, and it matters more than anything else in this story. Kelsey I met at 26. She worked the desk at a dentist's office on Hardy Street, and I came in with a cracked molar from biting a pecan shell like an idiot, and she looked up and said, "Sir, we don't do walk-ins," and then she worked me in anyway. That was the whole beginning. We got married at her mama's church out in Petal, which is the town across the river from Hattiesburg. And if you're not from here, just know that everybody's aunt lives in Petal. And Cody. Cody Reels. Cody I'd known since 9th grade at Oak Grove. He drove 2 hours to Meridian at 1 in the morning when my daddy had his stroke and didn't even ask if I needed him to. He just showed up in the hospital parking lot with 2 coffees and stood there with me. He was the best man at my wedding, cried in the middle of his own speech. Everybody at that reception was crying. My mother-in-law was crying. I was crying. I gave him a job in 2019 when the tire place he managed shut down. He didn't ask, I offered, and he said he didn't want charity, and I told him it wasn't charity. I needed somebody in that office who could count, and he could count. Cody was always good with numbers. That was the joke. So he ran my office, dispatch, fuel cards, the mill settlements, payroll. He had the keys, he had the passwords, he signed for deliveries, and he was on the account at the credit union in Petal because I put him on it, with my own mouth, at a desk, with a lady named Charlene notarizing it, and I even joked, I said, Charlene, if he ever runs off with my money, at least he'll be easy to find. He's got a face like a wanted poster. Charlene laughed. Cody laughed. Yeah, so how'd I find out? Renata Alvarado does my books. One Friday a month, laptop and a thermos, and she's about 5'0", and she scares every man in that shop, including me. First week of June, she calls me while I'm sitting at the scale house at the mill and says, Wes, I need you to come see me, and I need you to not bring Cody. I said what? She said it again exactly the same way. And my stomach didn't drop, that's what people say, and it's not what happened. I got real calm and real stupid. I figured she was about to tell me he had a DUI or he was behind on child support for his boy in Purvis. That's what I was braced for. I drove to her office by the interstate, and she had it laid out on the table in rows, like a woman who'd been up all night, with that look people get when they've already grieved a thing for you before they tell you. She said, Honey, sit down. $81,000. $81,000 over 14 months. Out of my company. Out of my trucks. And he'd built himself a whole little system. That's what got me. Fuel cards for trucks that were parked, drivers who didn't exist on the payroll, one of them with my dead uncle's name on him, which, I mean, come on. And then a check. $22,400 out of the settlement account, made out to a company called Rials Logistics, LLC, that he registered his own self in Jackson, and that never hauled one stick of wood in its life. And the signature on that check was mine. It wasn't mine, but it was mine. You know what I mean? He'd been signing my name on delivery paperwork for 4 years because I told him to. I taught him how to do it. I said, just sign it, Wes. Nobody at the mill cares. That's the part that makes me want to put my head through a wall. I looked at that check image in her office and felt about 100 years old. And then she said the thing that turned it. She said, Wes, I don't want to get in your business, but do you know he took Kelsey to Gulf Shores in April? And I said, no, he didn't. Kelsey went to Gulf Shores in April with her sister Nikki. And Renata just looked at me. She had the fuel card records. The company card, my name on the front of it, buying gas in Mobile, Alabama on a Thursday in April, and dinner at a place on the water in Orange Beach for $290. And Kelsey had come home from that trip with a sunburn and a keychain shaped like a pelican that is still, to this day, on my kitchen counter. I have not moved it. 11 days. That's how long I sat on it before her text came. 11 days eating supper across from that woman. 11 days saying good morning to that man at 7 o'clock on the phone, asking him, was the Freightliner out of the shop yet? I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I say something? Why didn't I throw him through a window? Because Marilyn told me not to. Marilyn Boykin's office is on the second floor of a brick building on Hardy Street. With a window unit that rattles and about 900 books she has definitely never read. 31 years of chancery work in this county, and she has heard everything, and the first thing she said when I put that folder on her desk was, "Don't you dare tell him." She said, "Right now, he thinks he's smart. A man who thinks he's smart keeps doing it, and every time he does it, he hands you another page." So I kept my mouth shut and Cody kept spending. That's why that folder was 3 feet from my elbow at 6:12 on a Tuesday when my wife texted me the sweetest gift anybody's ever given me. And here's what I did next. And this is the part where people think I'm lying. Nothing. I did nothing. I finished the sandwich, threw the wrapper in the barrel, drove home and fed my dog, Biscuit, who's a blue heeler with one blue eye and one brown one and the personality of a very tired old man. And I stood in my kitchen, and the house was so quiet I could hear the ice maker. And then I called Marilyn at home, and I said, "Marilyn, she left. She left with him." And Marilyn Boykin, 31 years in Chancery Court, said one word. She said, "Good." Kelsey called me 14 times that night. 14. I counted them in the morning. Not one voicemail, which is how I knew what it was about. She wasn't calling to explain herself. She was calling because I hadn't chased her. Kelsey's whole way of moving through this world is she does a thing and then she watches your face while you feel it. Take the face away and she doesn't know where she is. Her mama showed up Thursday, Darlene, in my carport at 8 in the morning, in a church dress on a Thursday, arms crossed. She goes, "Wesley, this is nonsense. Y'all need to talk." And I said, "Morning, Darlene." She goes, she's confused. 36 years old, and she's confused. That man got in her head. And I said, "When did you know?" She didn't answer that. I said, "Darlene, when did you know?" And she pulled that chin up and said, "I don't have to stand here and be interrogated in a carport." March. It was March. I found that out later from her own other daughter. Her mama had known since March, and she came to my house at Easter and ate my ham. I said, "Darlene, y'all have a blessed day." And I went inside and shut the door, and she stood out there for a while. I could see her shadow through the curtain, and then she left. That was the last time that woman ever set foot on my property. Hold on to her, though. Darlene's got a Sunday coming. Okay, so Friday morning, Maryland files. In Mississippi, divorce goes through Chancery Court, so Forest County Chancery Court. And here's what Kelsey never understood. Down here you can file on fault grounds. Adultery's one of them. It goes on the paper, her name and his name, and the chancellor reads that paper before he ever lays eyes on you. And a chancellor doesn't cut it down the middle like a birthday cake. He looks at what each of you brought in, what each of you did, and this is the part that ended her, whether one of you took marital money and blew it on somebody outside the marriage. They call that dissipation. Say it with me. Dissipation. She'd been to Gulf Shores on my fuel card with my best friend. And Maryland filed one more thing that same morning, and this is where South Mississippi is a very particular place to be a homewrecker. Most states got rid of this a long time ago. We didn't. It's called alienation of affection. You can sue the man who took your wife, him, personally, for money. Maryland served Cody Rials at his mama's house in Petal on a Saturday because she is not a nice woman, and I love her. And I'll say this plain so nobody misunderstands me. I didn't want Kelsey hurt. Some part of me I can't explain still wanted her to be okay, and I hated myself for it. I'd be doing 70 on Highway 49 with the radio off, catching myself hoping she was eating, hoping she was sleeping. And then I'd think about that Pelican keychain and want to put my truck in a tree. You can be a lot of things at one time. Nobody tells you that. Now, let me tell you about the part where I almost lost the whole thing. If you're sitting there thinking this was clean, that I pushed a button and watched it happen, no. Week 3 nearly ate me. First, she emptied the joint account. $46,000 gone on a Monday morning from a branch in Petal. Money that was sitting there because in July the mills slow down and I make payroll out of my own pocket, and everybody in this business knows that. Second, her lawyer, this fella out of Jackson with cufflinks, files for temporary support and tells the court I've got hidden income, that I run a cash business, that I've been squirreling money away for years. And on paper, a log trucking outfit with 9 trucks does look like a man with money. But here's the part I still can't get over. The paperwork he used to say I was hiding money. Cody made it. Cody's cooked, chewed up, made up books were getting waved at a chancellor by my wife's lawyer as proof that I'm a liar. And the chancellor ordered me to pay her $2,200 a month while it got sorted out. Temporary. $2,200 a month to the woman who left me a 4-sentence text. I paid it, every month, on time. Maryland said pay it and smile. I paid it. I did not smile. Third, and this is the one that nearly finished me, the fuel company cut my credit. Cody had left about $31,000 sitting unpaid on that account on his way out the door while he was buying Kelsey shrimp in Orange Beach. And a fuel company doesn't care why. They shut the cards off, all 9 trucks, on a Tuesday. You know what 9 log trucks with no diesel are? 9 very large paperweights. And the mill in Taylorsville does not care about your marriage. They've got a quota, and if you miss it 2 weeks, they'll find somebody who won't, and you never get that contract back. Never. I sat in a folding chair in my own shop that night in the dark with a bottle, and I thought, she's going to win. She left me for a thief, and she's still going to win, and I'm going to be 41 years old with a house I can't pay for and 9 trucks I've got to sell for parts. You know what saved me? A man named Curtis Boyd, who runs a fuel jobber out of Ellisville and knew my daddy before I was born, who took my call at 9:40 at night, said, "Wes, how much you need," and put diesel in my tanks on a handshake, no contract, on the strength of a dead man's name. 10 years of marriage went out on a text message, and a fuel man took my call at 9:40 at night. That's the whole world right there. Now, Nikki. Nikki is Kelsey's little sister, and I always figured Nikki was on Team Kelsey because that's how families work. Middle of July, I'm standing in the corner market on Lincoln Road holding a bag of oranges, of all the things, and I hear my name, and it's Nikki, and her face is red before she even opens her mouth. She goes, "Wes, I've got to tell you something, and you can't tell Mama." And she stands there in the produce section in front of God and everybody and tells me Kelsey told her back in March. And Nikki had asked her, "What about Wes?" And Kelsey said, and Nikki got this out with her chin shaking, "Cody's about to come into real money, and Wes will be fine. Wes is always fine. Wes is always fine." I've thought about that sentence more than anything else in my whole life. That's what 10 years got me. She didn't even hate me. Hate would have been something. I got Wes is always fine. And then Nikki said the thing that made the whole machine go. She said, "Do you know what he told her?" He told her he sold his daddy's land in Perry County. He told her he sold 60 acres and had cash coming, and they were going to Florida. And I stood there holding those oranges and started laughing like a crazy person right there in the produce section, because that land in Perry County has been tied up in probate for 6 years with 4 heirs fighting over it, and it has never been sold and could not be sold and will not be sold in Cody Rials's natural life. She'd left me for a man's inheritance that did not exist, and he'd been showing her money, real money, cash money, taking her to the coast, buying her a bracelet, and every dollar of it came out of my trucks. She was spending my money to leave me, and she thought it was his. Nikki sent me the screenshots that night, 14 months of them, and her hands must have been shaking, because half of them are crooked. And then August happened, and August is when I honestly thought the whole thing was dead, because the screenshots proved my wife was a liar. They didn't prove one thing about the money, and the money was the check. That check was the only piece of paper on this earth with his hand and my name on it in the same place. Maryland subpoenas the credit union in Petal. And Charlene, the same Charlene who notarized him onto my account and laughed at my joke, calls me herself, talking real slow, the way people talk when they're fixing to hurt you. She goes, "Wes, honey, we don't keep the images. 90 days and it's gone. I've got a line on a statement that says the amount and where it went, and that's every bit of it, sugar. There's no picture. There's nothing with a signature on it. That check was 14 months old." So I call Renata, and she's the one who showed the thing to me in June. I saw it with my own 2 eyes on her laptop screen. And she goes quiet for about 6 seconds, which from her is a scream. And she says, "Wes, I moved to a different service in the spring, and I cannot get the March batch to come across. I've been trying since Tuesday." I drove over and sat in a plastic chair in her office at 7 at night while she was on hold with a support line in another country, speaker on, hold music going, 2 laptops open, and every 20 minutes somebody picks up, asks her the same 4 questions, and puts her back on hold. 3 hours. Driving home on 49 that night, I did the math out loud in my truck like a crazy man. Without that image, what do I have? A bookkeeper who says she saw something against a man in a nice shirt who'll say Wes signed it himself and forgot. That's a coin flip. And if I lose it, Cody's cooked books are the real books. I'm the liar. The $2,200 a month goes permanent, and my wife's boyfriend keeps $81,000 of my diesel money while I pay her for the privilege. 5 weeks I lived like that. My belt went in 2 holes. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning with my heart going like I'd run somewhere. Renata called 2 days before the deposition, 11 o'clock at night on a Wednesday. She didn't say hello. She said, "I found it." I said, "Found what?" She said, "I emailed the whole March batch to your CPA in April of last year because He asked me to. It's been sitting in a sent folder for 15 months. I'm a grown man standing in his kitchen, in his underwear, at 11 at night, and I could not make a word come out. She said, "Wes?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "31 pages, honey. Go to bed. Now, the deposition. This is the one. If you're only going to remember one part of this, remember this part. Middle of September. Marilyn's office on Hardy Street, that little conference room with the window unit rattling, and a court reporter named Miss Deb with about 9,000 bracelets on. Cody's there with a lawyer he got off a billboard, and Kelsey came. She didn't have to come. Marilyn said she would, and I said no, she won't. And Marilyn said, "Honey, she has to see your face." She came. Sat right there beside him in a green dress I bought her, and she would not look at me for the first 20 minutes. Marilyn starts sweet. "Where do you bank, Mr. Reels? When were you employed by Latimer Hauling? Who had authority to sign on that settlement account?" Walking him on out there nice and easy, and he's leaned back, kind of smirky, because Cody has never been the smartest man in a room and has never once known it. And then she slides the check across the table. $22,400, Rials Logistics, LLC. And on the signature line, my name, in his hand. She says, "Is that your handwriting?" He goes, "That's Wes's signature." She says, "I didn't ask whose name it is. I asked whose hand wrote it." And his lawyer's already going, "Let's take a break." And Marilyn says, "Miss Deb, are you getting all this?" And Miss Deb says, "Yes, ma'am," without looking up. And I watched the billboard lawyer's whole face change, because he'd called that credit union too. He knew the images were gone. That's why his boy was leaned back like that. Marilyn slid the second one across, and the third. 31 pages, in color, out of a sent folder, and Cody's face just went. It went gray, like somebody let the air out of him, and he stopped answering, and his lawyer's got a hand on his arm, and Marilyn just keeps going in this pleasant little voice, like she's asking about the weather. She says, "Mr. Rials, did you sell your father's property in Perry County?" Silence. She says, "Mr. Rials, I've got the estate file from Perry County Chancery. That matter's still open. There is no sale. Did you tell anyone that you had sold that land?" And that's when Kelsey looked up. I'll be dead before I forget her face. She turned her head, real slow, and she looked at the side of his head, and she said his name. Cody. And his lawyer says, "Don't," and she says it again, louder, "Cody." And Marilyn, God bless that woman, Marilyn just leans back in her chair and lets the room burn, doesn't say a word, lets it happen. And Kelsey says, "Where'd the money come from?" And Cody Rials, best man at my wedding, the man who brought me coffee in a hospital parking lot at 1 a.m, put his face in his hands. She stood up so fast, her chair went over backward, hit the table with the flat of her hand. Miss Deb's bracelets jumped, and she screamed at him, "You told me you had 60 acres, and he's going, 'Baby, baby, sit down.'" And she's crying, and then she says the thing I'd been waiting all summer for without knowing it. She said, "I left him for you." And nobody in that room said anything, not me, especially not me. I sat there with my hands folded on the table like a man in church, and then she turned around and looked at me, first time all day, and I did not say one word to her, not one. That's the most control I've ever had over myself in my life, and I'll be proud of it till they put me in the ground. She walked out, left her purse. Somebody had to go get her purse. The final hearing was the 12th of October, courtroom on the second floor of the Forest County Courthouse, the one with the wood that's about 4 shades of brown and a ceiling fan that wobbles. She wore gray. She sat up straight. And I'll say this for Kelsey, she still thought she was going to win that morning. You could see it in how she was sitting, and the reason was the cufflinks lawyer, who got up and made a real argument. It was not a stupid argument. He goes, "Your Honor, this business has 9 trucks today. It had 1 when they married." Mrs. Latimer kept that home for 10 years so that growth could happen, and she's entitled to her share of what got built. And my ears got hot, because he was right about part of it, and that part had been keeping me up since June. Then Marilyn stands up, and she's got that auction receipt from Laurel from 2009, 3 years before Kelsey ever handed me a clipboard at a dentist's office, and she puts it in front of the chancellor, and she says one line. She says, "Your Honor, this truck is older than this marriage." Then she puts up the fuel card statement from Mobile, Alabama. The chancellor was an older man with his reading glasses down on his nose and about the flattest voice you ever heard. Nobody yells in there. That's the thing. Nobody tells you. The worst day of somebody's life gets read to them in the voice of a man ordering a sandwich. He said the business was Mr. Latimer's separate property, established prior to the marriage. He said the marital estate had been substantially diminished by expenditures made in furtherance of an adulterous relationship, and he was charging every dollar of it against Mrs. Latimer's share. And then he said the $46,000 had to go back. Her lawyer says, "Your Honor." And the chancellor says, "Counselor, I've read it," and turns a page. That's when she broke. Not loud. She kind of folded, put her hand flat on the table like she was steadying herself on a boat, and I heard the sound come out of her. And the court reporter just kept typing. Everybody just keeps typing. That's the part I still see when I close my eyes. The typing. She got the Tahoe. She got her own retirement. She got to keep about $11,000 out of the 46 and give the rest back. And I want you to hear that math, because she stole $46,000 from me in June, and 10 years of marriage bought her the right to keep 11 of it. She walked out of that courtroom with a used Tahoe and a lecture from a man who never raised his voice one time. The alienation of affection case against Cody went to a jury in this county, in this town where everybody's cousin knows everybody's business, and they gave me a judgment against him for $400,000. Let me be a grown man about it. I have not seen a nickel, and I never will. Cody Rials doesn't have $400,000. He doesn't have $400. But a judgment sits there like a stump in a field, and every time that man tries to buy a house or finance a truck for the rest of his natural life, there I am. The stealing went to the DA. He pled. Restitution and probation, and I'm not going to lie to you, I wanted more. I wanted him picking up trash on Highway 49 in an orange vest where the whole town could see. I didn't get that. He's got a garnishment on him, and he lives in a camper behind his mama's house. Now, Darlene, I hadn't seen my mother-in-law since she stood in my carport in a church dress and told me her 36-year-old daughter was confused. She never called. Not once, all summer. She'd known since March, and she ate my ham at Easter. Second Sunday in November, I drove over to Petal to drop off the last of Kelsey's stuff. 2 boxes. Winter coats, a crock pot, a shoebox of pictures I wasn't going to look through. I turn onto her street about 1 in the afternoon, right when everybody's coming home from church, and there's a wrecker in Darlene's driveway with its lights going, backed up to Cody's truck. That truck. The loud black one with the light bar that he'd back into a parking space so you had to look at it. And Darlene's out on the grass in her Sunday clothes hollering at a repo boy who's maybe 25, got a clipboard, is not hearing a word she says. Both hands going. She's saying, "You cannot do this. This is my property. This is my driveway." And he goes, "Ma'am, it ain't your truck." And Cody's standing in the carport in gym shorts, watching a man take his truck with his arms down at his sides. Both of them saw me at the same time. I got out, set those 2 boxes on the end of her driveway, real neat, one on top of the other. I did not say a word to either one of them, and it took everything in me because I had a whole speech. I'd had that speech in my head since June. I got back in my truck, and Darlene comes marching down that driveway with her finger already up, and she goes, "You did this, Wesley. You did all this." And I put the window down about halfway, and I said, "No, ma'am. March did this." And I drove off, and in my mirror, she's standing at the end of her own driveway between 2 cardboard boxes with the whole street, watching from their porches, and that wrecker pulling out with that pretty black truck up on the hook. Kelsey came to my house one time after. Early December, and it was raining the way it rains here, straight down. Warm rain in December. And she stood in my carport soaked through, and she didn't have an umbrella, and I looked at her through the storm door for a second before I opened it. Her mascara was gone, hair flat to her head. She'd lost weight she didn't have to lose. She said, "I made a mistake." And here's the true part, the part I've never told anybody. I wanted to open that door. Some ugly little animal part of me wanted to let her in and make her coffee and put a towel around her shoulders and pretend, and I could feel it in my chest like heartburn. I said, "Kelsey, I know you did." She said, "That's it? That's all you're going to say to me?" And I thought about Wes is always fine. And I said, "You didn't make a mistake in April. You made one in March, and then you kept making it, every morning for 100-and-something mornings, right across that kitchen table from me. A mistake is something you do one time." She started to say my name, and I said, "Go on home to your mama's, Kelsey." And I shut the door. And I stood there with my forehead on the doorframe for I don't know how long, listening to that rain. And then I heard the Tahoe start up. That was the last time I saw her. Here's what nobody tells you about winning. It's quiet. I was braced for it to feel like fireworks. It wasn't like that. I woke up on a Saturday in the spring, and the house was just quiet. And Biscuit was up on the end of the bed where he's not supposed to be, and I made coffee and took it out on the back steps, one of those March mornings down here, before the heat sits down on you, and the neighbor's kid was already out in the yard hollering about something. And I noticed I was breathing all the way down, all the way to the bottom. I hadn't done that in a year and a half. I'd been breathing off the top of my chest since Renata called me at that scale house, and I never even knew it. 9 trucks still rolling. Renata does the books, and Renata alone. And there's a rule with my name on it now that says nobody signs anything but me. Curtis Boyd still gets my fuel business and will till one of us dies. The Pelican keychain's in a drawer out at the shop. Took me a year and a half, but I moved it. Everybody asks if I planned it, like I'm some kind of genius. I didn't plan a thing. I was a guy driving around with a folder in his toolbox trying to work out how to be kind about the unkindest thing I'd ever had to say. And she took the choice away from me in 4 sentences and a period. Here's the only thing I've got for you. People tell you what you're worth to them real early, and they usually do it in something small, in a sentence they never think you'll hear. Mine was Wes is always fine, 10 years, and that's what I came out to. Not somebody you tell, not somebody you look at. Just a man who'd be fine so it didn't count. So if it ever happens to you, and God, I hope it doesn't, don't do the calling, don't do the begging. Go look at what's already in your hands first, because I promise you, half the time the person walking out has no earthly idea what they're walking into. Anyway, that's it. That's the story. Y'all take care of each other out there.